Welcome back, everybody. I've returned from vacation and it's time to make videos again. We're starting with this one, which is going to be an introduction to using Git in your projects. So, first things first, you'll need to install Git. If you don't know what Git is, this is actually a great place, Atlassian, is a great place to just get a quick understanding of what Git is, what it's for. This video is not going to take too much time to explain what Git is, what it is not. It's mostly going to be about how to use it. And I'm also not going to argue whether you should or should not use Git in your projects. I think you should, and it will be good practice for any time that you end up needing to use Git in a professional situation. And to be clear, this video is about Git, not GitHub. So Git is to GitHub, sort of like math is to a calculator. You have to understand math in order to use a calculator, and it allows you to do things a bit better. And you need to understand Git in order to use GitHub. So that's the extent to which I'll explain that difference. This video is about Git, so let's start. If you've installed certain things on your Mac, you may already have Git installed. So you'll just need to check by going to your terminal and typing git -- version, and it'll spit out a version for you if you have it installed. If you don't, just follow the instructions. Google install Git, Windows or Ubuntu, whatever you're using, and we will start from there. So I have Git installed, so I'll type git -- version. That's the version I have, apparently, and I'm just in a folder with today's date, as I often am. So this is just an empty folder. Just to prove it to you, there's nothing in it. And that's what we're starting with. Just our empty folder. This is going to be where our project will live. So to start Git in a folder, you just type git init. And now you've initialized an empty Git repository in your current folder. And so again, there's nothing in this folder. So if I type git status to see what changes I've made since creating my Git repository, it's going to tell me I'm on the master branch and that there's nothing to commit, which makes sense. I have an empty folder. And the way that Git works is it allows you to selectively choose what things you want held in the repository, and you only have to push things to the repository when you think they're ready to be essentially saved. It's like hitting the save button on your project. But it also allows you to split your project into different branches so that you can work on multiple versions of your code, and then when that version is ready, bring it back into master. So you see that we're on branch master. Currently there's only one branch, that's the master branch, and there's nothing in our repo. So that's where we're starting. Now let's just create file.txt. It'll just be an empty file. So now we have one file in this folder. Now if I do git status, we're going to get a different message. It's going to compare our empty repository to our current folder and see that we have one untracked file. So our repository doesn't have any version of file.txt. And so because our current folder has that version, it's going to say this is something that is a difference between what you are working on now and what we last committed to our repository. And let's just say that this file is ready to be committed. We haven't done anything with it, but maybe it's ready. All you have to do to add something to your repository is type git add and then the file name. All right, so now if I do git status, we'll see a different message. And it's going to say that we have changes ready to be committed. It's a new file called text.txt. And you'll see that we can type something to unstage it. What that means is this file is not yet committed to our repository. It's just in the staging area. And that'll be important later. But for now, just understand that this is not in the repo yet. It's just ready to be committed. And the way that we commit something to our repository is typing git commit, and then type -m just to say that you're going to leave a message, and this will be our first commit. Hit enter. And now it'll show us that on the master, we've made one change. We called it first commit. We changed one file, and there was no insertions, no deletions. We just added a new file. And now if we type get status, it will say that there are no changes to be made, and we're on the master branch. So in other words, our current folder with an empty file.txt matches what's in our repo. And I should have said this off the bat. Git is on your computer. You don't need to be connected to the internet unless, of course, you're downloading Git for the first time, installing it. Git is just a folder. So if I type lsla to see everything, you'll see that I have a .git folder. That means it's local. Git is on your computer. You are not pushing anything to a server. It's just something that you can use on your machine. So you don't have to worry about anything beyond that. So that's one of the big differences between Git and GitHub. It makes Git sound scarier than it is. You are just working on your machine. You're not going to break anything by using Git. Okay? So I should have mentioned that off the bat. Just want to make that very clear. So we now have one file. It's empty, and it's saved in our repo. So now if we hop into file.txt, and we just add a whole lot of nonsense, and then we save that nonsense. Excuse me. Now we'll check our status. And instead of an untracked file, we now have a modified file. So it knows, our repo knows about file.txt, okay? But it's been modified. Now, I'm going to do something first that might seem a little weird. So if I go back into my file, I remove that, and then I write and save it again. And then I do get status. Oh, it's still going to say it's modified. If I removed this folder, so let's remove that. Let's go remove file.txt. And then I'm going to add that file again. Now let's do get status. Now it says that there are no changes to commit. Even though I changed this file, I modified it, then I edited it, it still thought it was modified, so I just deleted it completely and made a new one. It says there's no changes to be made because it doesn't care what I did in between the last commit and the current state. It's just comparing those two states. So it sees that I have an empty file called file.txt. It doesn't care that I changed that file, deleted that file, and made it again. It just sees the repo has an empty file, .txt. I have an empty file, .txt, so there's no changes to be made. Okay? So let's hop back in. And we'll add all the nonsense back in. And get status, it'll say we have a modified file.txt. Whenever it pops up, there we go. I want to add, actually, let's add another one first. That way I can show you two things at once. So now if I create another one, let's go file2.txt. And this will have different nonsense in it, a lot of H's and G's. And we get status. All right, so now I have a modified file.txt because the repo has file.txt, but its contents are different than what's in our current folder. And we have an untracked file2.txt because file2.txt is not in our Git repo, but it is in the current folder that we're using. Facebook just needs to respect my do not disturb. So now this is where the staging area comes in. Let's say that my modifications to file.txt are something that I want to commit. And I want to essentially save those changes to my repo before moving on and making changes to file2.txt. I can go git add file.txt. And now if I check my status, I have file.txt's modified changes in the staging area, but I have an untracked file, file2.txt. And now if I commit, I can say file.txt has nonsense. Oops. So I've made one change, and that change was an insertion of that line of nonsense into file.txt. Now if I check my status again, you'll see that the only difference between my current working version of the code and the current version of the repo is the untracked file 2. So I was able to commit changes individually. So if I had a bunch of crap that I did not want in my repo, in this case file2.txt, and I did not want that committed, but I liked some of the changes I'd made elsewhere, I can just ignore those and commit individual things with a specific message that will be appended to the commit. Now this is a bit of an aside, but this is super useful if you are using Git a fair bit. So don't worry about this otherwise. But if you do git pretty equals one line. Oh, I gotta do git log, sorry. Git log pretty equals one line. This will show you all your commits in your current branch. So that's really useful. It makes it much easier to read than just doing git log, which spits out a whole bunch of extra information. And this is why useful commit messages are beneficial, even, or clear commit messages, I should say, even in your own projects, because you can see what has been committed to your branch. Okay, so that's the super basics of using Git. We've used one branch, we've committed files, we've not committed files, we've committed individual files, we've removed files. So currently we have this untracked file, file2, so let's just remove that. And check my status again, it'll say that there are no changes to commit. So that's what we're going to move forward with. Now, as I mentioned, we are on the master branch. If we have a master branch and they've taken the time to name it, there must be other branches, right? And yes, there are. However, they don't exist yet. We have to make them. You make branches by doing git checkout -b, and then whatever you want to call your branch. I'm going to call it file2, or actually I'll call it make file2. It's a dumb branch name, but it'll make sense in a second. So now I have a new branch, and if I do git branch, we can see that there's a master branch, and there's a make file2 branch, which I'm currently on. And if I do a git status, I'm on make file2, and there's nothing to commit because I have not made any changes since switching to this branch. What that means, because I just moved from master to make file2 and I have no changes, that means that master and make file2 are identical currently. However, as soon as I do vim file2.text, add in all my gibberish, do my status. All right, now we have an untracked file2.txt. This is familiar, right? Let's add that. And I'm just going to show you if you do -a, that'll add everything. And so git status, just to show you, it's been added to the staging area, git commits, and file2 has nonsense. All right, so we'll list our files. So we have file.txt and we have file2.txt. Now, if I check out master, I've switched to master, and if I do ls, we only have file.txt. And that's because make file2 branch has the changes that we made to file2.txt, but master does not. And this is the essence of source control. This allows you to work on different versions of your code, make changes, get them all stable, before you merge them back into master. So master, if this was running some sort of ready for production code, we don't need to pollute master with anything as we make changes to our code because we can do it all in other branches. And now if I go from master to another branch, let's do make file3, just because let me get -b. Now make file3 is identical to master. until, of course, I make file 3, and then I add that, commit it, check my status. There should be no changes now. There's nothing to commit. But if I check out master, on branch master, there's nothing to commit, but we still just have file.txt. If I check, and if I look at my list of branches, I have makefile2 and makefile3. Makefile2 has everything that master has plus file2.txt. Makefile3 has everything that master has plus file3.txt. They don't share anything. Now, there are a lot of best practices with merging. I would say what I'm about to show you is a way that you can get started with it on your own projects. Each team is going to have their own preferred methods. I'm just going to show you one way you can do it. All right? So we're currently on master. Master is highlighted. If I do git merge, makefile2, now I've added a new file called file2.txt. So I now have file and I have file2. And if I then go to git status, nothing to commit. This is now the current version of master. It has file and file2. If I'm happy with all the changes that have been made to file 3, for example, in the other branch, I can then do git merge make file 3. Send you a commit message. Oh, I must have typed something incorrectly. Merge. Not committing merge, use git commit to commit the merge. Okay. Oops. All right, well, something weird happened there. I must have mistyped something. But now we have file 2, and we have file 3. At this point, you could delete your other branches. You could remove makefile2 and makefile3 because technically you don't need them anymore. And then you can just make new branches when you want to make more changes. So now that master has, oops, I don't like git status. Now that master has all 3, if I wanted to make changes to file 3, maybe there's a bug in what the contents of file 3. I could do something like git check out the update file 3. I go into file 3. I make all my incredibly insightful changes. We've now got those changes ready. I don't want to write something that's a really bad example, but I'll just add file 3 has nonsense. It's not super useful, but I'm not doing anything super useful with this code at the moment. All right, so now we have a directory or a branch with everything committed. Let's just clear this to make it easier to read. Now if I check out master, then I can merge in, actually let's make sure I called it the right thing. So update file 3. So if I then merge in everything from update file 3, now we have our updated file 3. And if I check everything, or if I look at file 3, now it has those changes. So that's a way that you can work with different files, different branches, and then merge them back together. You will obviously do much more interesting things than just adding nonsense to a text file. One thing that I generally like to do, and it's a way that keeps my code from having merge conflicts, which is where you've changed the same lines of code in multiple versions and then you try to bring them together, is by separating my modules into different branches. So I'll show you a quick example of how that might work. So I'm currently on master, I believe. Yes. So now, if I create a new branch, I will call it maths because that's my favorite example module. Now I'm on a branch called maths. And if I make a directory, and I'll call it maths, this is where my module is going to live. So if you look at my status, I have just made, I need to go into maths, and we'll make an actual file in here. So it'll be vim run.js. And it'll just be the super basic structure. All right, so that's our super useful maths module. It's just going to take two numbers and add them together when you call add. Okay. Let's make sure I'm in. Yep, I'm in the maths. All right, we're good. CD. Now, if I check my status, I have untracked files in the maths folder. So I can commit everything. And so now all my changes are saved in this particular branch, which is the maths branch. I'm on the maths branch, and now if I go back to my master branch, and I do an ls, we don't have a maths folder. And that's totally fine. I can continue developing my maths module for as long as I want until it's finally ready to be merged into master. And because we don't have any folders called maths in the master branch, it will have no merge conflicts. So it will simply drop this new folder in with however many, 1, 2, 10,000 files in it, it does not matter, and none of them are going to conflict with anything that's already in here. That's one way that I like to structure my code when I'm using Git. I find that it prevents me from spending a lot of time doing weird debugging with source control, and it allows me to get a nice stable working version of my code, in one branch without worrying about breaking anything that's happening in master. So, I know I rushed through the middle part there when I started repeating myself a lot, but I hope this shows you a decent example of how you might use Git in your own projects, or at least the basics of getting started with Git, and that it's not really that scary. As long as you're familiar with using the terminal a bit and navigating around, then you'll be fine. If you would like to see a video on that, let me know in the comments down below. I would be happy to make a video on using the terminal. I know that learncode.academy has a video from way back that gives you the basics. So check that out if you want. He's a great source. And I will see you in the next video. Thanks for watching.